Absolute adaptation is a death sentence. When a system is tuned to the maximum possible efficiency for one specific environment, its resilience vanishes. A structure this perfect collapses into dust at the slightest touch. For thousands of years, we have treated moderation as a safe haven. Ancient philosophical frameworks like Aristotle's golden mean taught that the midpoint between two extremes is the only place to find security. We are culturally conditioned to view the middle ground as a stable resting place. Modern system science now reveals the Goldilocks paradox. It shows that the just right state is rarely a stable equilibrium. Instead, that comfortable middle ground is a sharp, volatile precipice. Peak performance leaves no room for error. At this limit, a microscopic anomaly triggers a systemic failure. The lack of redundancy that enables the system to thrive ensures that any disruption becomes catastrophic. Maintaining this sweet spot requires incredibly intricate, highly improbable feedback loops. The system is forced to constantly fight against its own momentum. The perfect state is actually a state of extreme vulnerability. This tension defines life at the microscopic level. Every species faces a constant mathematical trade-off. It needs genetic stability to preserve the traits that work today, but it also needs mutational flexibility, the ability to generate errors to adapt to a changing world. This diagram shows the error catastrophe threshold. Mutating too rapidly erases the master genetic sequence, vibrating the species into noise. Survival requires abandoning the peak of evolutionary fitness. Populations select for flatter, more resilient genetic profiles, a survival of the flattest. We see this same struggle inside our own cells with autophagy. Healthy cells use this self-eating mechanism to clear out cellular waste and prevent cancer. But once a tumor forms, it hijacks this process to survive the nutrient-starved environment of a growing mass. Because a tumor depends on a narrow, optimized signaling window, doctors can trigger an oncogene overdose. By artificially pushing the cancer's survival signaling past its peak threshold, the cell becomes overstimulated, causing it to implode and consume itself. Biological survival is a high-speed chase along a razor-thin line between perfect adaptation and total self-erasure. We apply this logic to our entire planet. We assume Earth is safe because it sits in the ideal orbital location, the circumstellar habitable zone. But orbital distance is just one variable. Venus, Earth, and Mars all started with similar raw materials. Venus collapsed into a runaway greenhouse oven, while Mars lost its internal heat and froze. Earth's carbonate-silicate cycle is a geological thermostat. Rain strips carbon dioxide from the air, bonding it to weathered rock, washing it to the seafloor. But in flat, soil-mantled terrains lacking tectonic uplift, the reaction halts. Carbon builds up, and the cooling effect fails. As we gain a clearer resolution of the long-term carbon cycle, the legendary robustness of Earth's stabilizing feedback is vanishing. The forces keeping us alive appear to be far weaker than our models once assumed. The stability of our world depends on a desperate, geographically constrained geological engine fighting off planetary death to maintain our narrow slice of history. Our civilization builds macrostructures that suffer from this exact same fragility. Governments chase the fiscal Goldilocks zone, a state of hyper-optimized growth, low inflation, and manageable deficits. This zone is a mathematical trap. Governments can run permanent deficits only if the debt's interest rate stays strictly below the economic growth rate. If that gap closes even slightly, the debt becomes unsustainable. The factors required to keep those interest rates low are incredibly sensitive. High income inequality stabilizes this zone by flooding the market with private savings, depressing rates. If a government successfully reduces that inequality, the pool of savings evaporates, interest rates spike, and the optimized fiscal space vanishes. Human economies, malignant tumors, and planetary climates all converge on the same discovery. The absolute peak of perfect efficiency is exactly where the entire system is most exposed to total annihilation. This pattern suggests that complex systems do not exist in a state of rest. They are engaged in an active, exhausting war against entropy to maintain a precarious survival corridor. We see this at the largest scale possible, the Goldilocks enigma. The fundamental constants of physics, like the speed of light and the strength of gravity, sit on their own optimized razors. If these parameters shifted by a fraction of a percent, stars fail to ignite, matter dissolves into gray dust, and chemistry becomes impossible. To explain how these constants stay so perfectly aligned, some physicists move beyond physical matter and look at information. If the universe functions like a giant self-regulating circuit, it requires a way to process and finalize its own state. Physicist John Wheeler described this as the participatory universe. In this model, conscious observation acts as the ultimate feedback loop. Through retrocausality, the act of observing the universe today collapses quantum possibilities to finalize the physical laws of the remote past. Conscious existence provides the active, stabilizing pressure that holds reality's fragile tightrope together.